forest held a heavy, unnatural silence, and Arya should have recognized it as her first warning. Years on the road had taught her that true quiet meant predators were near and predators meant danger. But exhaustion ran deep in her bones, gnawing at her after 3 weeks of traveling between packs, offering her healing in exchange for whatever scraps of food and shelter they would give. Her white hair hung limp over her shoulders, streaked with dirt, pale skin marred with grime, and her storm-gray eyes burned with fatigue. She should have stopped hours ago, but the nearest settlement was still a day's walk, and solitude in the wilderness had never frightened her. Since she was 15, after the rogue attack that had taken her parents and left her an orphan, Arya had been wandering alone. No pack wanted a girl who looked like a ghost. Her pale hair, almost translucent skin, and stormy eyes had always marked her as unnatural. A harbinger, some whispered. She wasn't fully albino, the healers had told her parents, but close enough to unsettle other wolves. Her parents died defending their small pack from rogues, and no one had fought to keep their strange daughter alive. Before their bodies were even laid to rest, she had been sent toward the border with only a bag of supplies. That was 7 years ago. 7 years of wandering. 7 years offering her healing gift, never staying long enough to form attachments. Attachments ended in pain. Her parents had been gifted healers, and their training had been thorough. But skill alone couldn't make people comfortable around someone who looked like death incarnate. A shrill, terrified cry cut the silence. A puppy, numb. Not a puppy, a wolf cub. Arya froze. Every instinct screamed for her to turn away. Wolf cubs always had guardians nearby. Guardians meant territorial adults who would not tolerate a stranger approaching. The cry came again, weaker, a whimper that pierced her chest. She moved before caution could hold her back, following the sound through tangled undergrowth. Her healing sense, her magical ability to sense pain and injury, flared to life. The cub was in agony. Arya burst through a wall of brambles and stopped dead. A small white cub, barely months old, lay matted with blood, dragging a hind leg, twisted at a grotesque angle. Deep gashes ran across its back, still bleeding. Between it and the forest, 3 rogues in wolf form loomed, their fur patchy, their eyes wicked with malice. This was not hunting, it was cruelty. They toyed with the cub, letting it crawl away before dragging it back, relishing its terror. "Hey," Arya shouted before she could stop herself. "Leave it alone." The rogues paused, recognizing her. Alone. Omega. Unarmed. Defenseless. The tallest shifted into human form, a scarred face and cruel eyes. Well, he rasped. "Looks like the moon goddess smiles on us today. First a little prince and now a pretty Omega for us to play with. You're a strange one, aren't you? Like a corpse that forgot to die." Arya's mind raced. White fur. Hunted specifically. This wasn't any cub. This was someone important. Someone whose death mattered. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, trying to keep her voice calm. "Step away from that cub or else." The rogue laughed as the other 2 flanked her, shifting to human form. "What little ghost girl you're going to fight us? No pack to back you up. I can smell it. You're nobody. Nothing. And nobody will care when we're done." He was right. She was nobody. No pack would avenge her death. No one would notice her gone. But the cub, that small bleeding white wolf, he was somebody. Arya had spent 7 years being nobody. She was done standing aside. "You're right," she whispered, reaching into her pack. "I am nobody. Which means I've got nothing to lose." She drew the knife her father had given her, the only weapon she possessed, and lunged at the nearest rogue. The fight was savage and desperate. Arya wasn't a trained fighter. Her father had given her basic self-defense lessons, but she was a healer, not a warrior. The rogues were bigger, stronger, and built to kill. Yet she had the edge of surprise and an even sharper weapon, fury. Years of pent-up anger at a world that had cast her aside, at packs that had used her talents, then discarded her at injustice she had never asked for. Her knife found its mark in the first rogue's throat, cutting a major artery before he could react. He crumpled, gurgling as blood sprayed. The second lunged from behind, claws raking her ribs, tearing flesh and cloth. Arya screamed but drove her elbow back into his face, breaking his nose. When his grip faltered, she twisted, driving her blade upward through his chin and into his brain. He dropped. The third rogue, seeing his companions fall, shifted back to wolf form and lunged. Arya tried to evade, but her injuries slowed her. His teeth sank into her shoulder, shaking her like a rag doll. Bones cracked. Her knife slipped from trembling fingers. He slammed her against a tree. She hit hard and slid to the ground. Through blurred vision, she saw him stalking toward the cub, crawling desperately across the forest floor. No. She hadn't endured all this to fail now. Her healing sense screamed, cataloging every injury with brutal clarity. 3 broken ribs, a punctured lung, a shattered shoulder, deep gashes across her abdomen, internal bleeding. Death was minutes away. But her gift wasn't just for sensing, it was for saving. Healing moved life energy, directing it to mend the body. She had always been taught caution, never overextend, never risk her own life. But she'd never been taught what happened if you pushed past the edge, if you gave everything. Arya reached deep past her usual reservoir, past every safety limit her parents had drilled into her, into the very core of her life force. And she pulled. Raw primal power surged, agonizing and all-consuming. This wasn't ordinary healing. Something ancient stirred within her, tearing and reshaping her from the inside. Life Weaver. A whisper in her mind. The forbidden gift. Not for healing, but for taking. She unleashed it at the rogue, siphoning his vitality. Watching in grim satisfaction as he collapsed mid-step, aged decades. In seconds, fur paling and patching before he finally stopped moving. The backlash slammed into her like a hammer. Using Life Weaver to kill was dangerously forbidden. Who knew? She might have laughed if she had breath. Arya crawled toward Kale, every movement igniting fresh agony. The little cub's frightened blue eyes followed her, whimpering. Up close, she saw his beauty. His white fur pure and royal, except for the streaks of blood. If the rogue had called him Little Prince, this wasn't just any cub. It was one of the ruling bloodlines, perhaps even the Alpha King's own son. "Hey, sweetheart," Arya whispered, trembling as she stroked his head. "It's okay. You're safe now. I've got you." The cub whimpered, nudging her hand with his muzzle. His injuries were severe, but not immediately fatal like hers. If she healed him, there would be nothing left for herself. She'd die. But if she didn't, he might not survive until help arrived. His leg would never set correctly without her magic. The gashes on his back could fester. There was no choice. "This is going to feel strange," she murmured, placing both hands on his small body. "But it will help. I promise." Arya reached for her gift again. This time she didn't pull from the rogue or from the forest or anything outside. She drew from herself, from her very life force, the energy that kept her heart beating, her lungs breathing. Life Weaver allowed vitality to flow between living beings. She had been taught the limits, only what was spare, else both giver and receiver could die. Her parents had never pushed those boundaries. Arya poured everything she had into Kyle. She felt his broken leg straighten, knit and heal. Arya felt the deep gashes on Kale's back close and seal the soft fur already creeping over the pink skin beneath. Strength returned to him, his breathing evened, and his whimpers of pain faded. She kept giving, pouring every ounce of her energy until there was nothing left. Darkness crept at the edges of her vision. Her heart slowed. Her breaths stopped somewhere along the way, and she hadn't even noticed. That was bad. Really bad. The cub was fully healed, perfectly whole. He nuzzled her face, whining as if he understood the enormity of what she had done. So, Kay, Arya murmured, her voice barely more than a rasp. You're going to be okay. Someone would find him. Someone important, surely. Too fine a soul to be a nobody like me, she thought. Her eyes fluttered closed. She felt herself slipping detached, as though watching someone else fall. But it was a good death, she decided, a far better way to go than alone in the forest, unseen, unremembered. At least she had saved someone. At least her last act had meaning. And then the darkness swallowed her completely. She didn't see Kyle throw back his head and let out a howl far too powerful for something so small. She didn't see the echo ripple through the forest, carrying a frequency only certain bloodlines could hear. And she didn't see the wolves that began to converge. First came the wild's white wolves of the deep, ancient forest, drawn by the burst of life-weaver energy that had erupted when Arya gave everything to Kyle. They emerged cautiously, circling the fallen woman, and the cub, sensing her, recognizing her power. A life-weaver. The first in 3 centuries, and she had used it to save a child. That made her sacred, worthy of protection. More wolves came, drawn by Kyle's howl and the gathering of the wilds. These were larger, more regal, their pristine white fur marking them as the royal guard. And at the center, moving faster than the rest, came the largest wolf Arya had never seen. Baron Alpha King of the Northern Territories burst into the clearing, shifting to human form even before his momentum stopped. His hair gleamed pale gold, nearly white in the moonlight, and his eyes were the same brilliant blue as Kyle's. He took in the scene in a single glance: 3 dead rogues, 1 tiny white cub howling over a fallen woman, and that woman sprawled in a pool of her own blood, pale as a ghost. No, not a ghost. She was breathing just barely. The faintest chest rise, a faint pulse at her neck. Alive, but barely. Varen's wolf screamed in his mind, clawing at his consciousness with urgency unlike anything he had ever felt. Mate. Mate, mate. The bond struck him like lightning, raw and undeniable, terrifying in its power. This stranger, somehow in the heart of the forest with his son, was his true mate. And his son, Kyle. Varen's chest tightened. For hours he had tracked them after the attack that took Kyle from their traveling party. He had followed the scent of his cub and the rogues, praying the boy would survive. He expected to find death. He expected to deal the rogues a slow, painful reckoning himself. He did not expect to find them already dead, felled by an Omega, barely surviving the fight herself. No, not surviving. She was dying, here, now, in front of him. Healers. Varen roared, dropping to his knees beside her hands, hovering, afraid even to touch. 2 of his guards, Bryn and Zane, shifted and ran back to the camp, while the others formed a protective perimeter, eyes scanning the forest for signs of more rogues. Kale, brave, foolish, beloved, crawled into Varen's lap, pawing at his chest. Varen wrapped one arm around the cub, feeling a flood of relief at having him back safe and whole. Yet his gaze never left the woman. She looked impossibly young, maybe mid-20s, features that could have been beautiful if they weren't slack with unconsciousness and gray from blood loss. Her white hair spread around her head like a halo matted with dirt and dried blood. Her clothes, torn, dozens of injuries, revealed any one potentially fatal. But it was her hands that held Varen's attention. Even in unconsciousness, they rested on Kyle's fur, as if she had been stroking him when she collapsed. A faint glow shimmered around them, magic unmistakable. Lifeweaver. Varen breathed it in. A lifeweaver. That explained everything: why Kyle had been perfectly healthy despite his injuries, and why this woman was barely alive despite her youth and strength. Why was this woman barely clinging to life despite her youth and strength? She had wielded the forbidden gift, the one that could transfer life force itself. She had saved Kyle by pouring her own vitality into him. She had risked death for a cub she had never even met, for his son, his heir. And she was his mate, though she likely didn't realize it yet, probably never having felt the bond through the haze of pain and near death. Varin made his decision, then kneeling in the blood-soaked earth, holding his son in one arm and his dying mate at his feet. She had saved the most precious thing in his world. She had given everything to protect a child she had never known. He would move heaven and earth to return the favor. Within minutes, the healers arrived, 3 of the best. They took one look at her, and their faces went grim. "Your Majesty," the head healer, an older woman named Leora, said cautiously, "I don't know if you can save her." Varin said, his voice brooking no argument. "I don't care what it takes. I don't care if you have to perform miracles. She saved my son. She's a life weaver, and she's my mate. Do not let her die." Leora's eyes widened at the declaration, but she nodded sharply and went to work. The other 2 healers, Thane and Mira, joined her, hands glowing with magic as they worked frantically to stabilize her. Internal bleeding first, then the punctured lung, then broken bones. 20 relentless minutes of sweat and strain. Every ounce of their power poured into keeping this stranger alive. Finally, Leora leaned back, wiping her brow. "She's stable. Barely. She'll need constant care for at least a week, maybe longer." Relief hit Varin so hard it ached. "Get a stretcher. Now. We're taking her back to the palace immediately. And someone clean up my son. He's covered in blood." Kale whimpered, refusing to move from her side. At some point during the healing, he had shifted back to his small human form, a 2-year-old boy with pale blonde hair and his mother's piercing blue eyes. "Dada, don't let her die," he sobbed, clinging to her arm. "She saved me. The bad men. They were hurting me and she made them stop. She's nice. Don't let her die." Varin's heart clenched. Cal had barely spoken since his mother's death 2 years ago. He had been retreating into himself, quieter, fearful despite Varin's constant care. And now here he was, speaking in full sentences, begging for the life of a stranger who had risked everything for him. "She's not going to die," Varin promised, scooping his son into his arms. "I swear it, Kael. She's going to be okay, and when she wakes, you can thank her yourself." They fashioned a stretcher from branches and cloaks, handling her as carefully as possible. Varin carried Kael, who refused to release her hand, resulting in a precarious procession. The boy stretched between his father's arms and her side. The wilds that had gathered melted back into the forest, though Varin noticed they didn't go far. They stayed lurking just out of sight, unwilling to leave the life weaver completely. That would be interesting to handle later. For now, Varin's only concern was getting her somewhere safe and keeping her alive. The journey to the palace took 3 days. They moved slowly, stopping frequently, so the healers could reinforce their work. Varin barely slept, spending most hours watching over her, one hand on his son, the other near enough to Arya to feel her weak heartbeat through their bond. During those 3 days, he learned everything he could about her. Her name was Arya, according to the papers in her pack. She was a traveling healer with no pack affiliation, 22 years old, born to Samuel and Lydia, both deceased. No living family. Almost nothing of value, a few healing supplies, a spare set of clothes, her father's knife, still sticky with rogue blood, and a small journal. Her mother's collection of healing recipes. Alone in the world, since age 15. 7 years of wandering alone, probably facing suspicion and prejudice for her unusual appearance. 7 years surviving without a home. Not anymore. Now she had a home whether she wanted it or not. She had a mate and a cub who had imprinted on her so fiercely that Kale threw tantrums any time they tried to separate him from her for even a few minutes. She had a future if Varin had any say. When they finally reached the palace, Varin had her installed in a suite of rooms adjacent to his own. The healers organized a strict rotation around Arya's bed, and Varin made it unmistakably clear her care came before everything. Kyle refused to leave her side. He slept on a small cot pressed close to her bed, his tiny hand gripping hers even in his dreams. 6 long days passed before she stirred. 6 days of watching her chest rise and fall of feeling. The mate bond slowly thrummed to life. As her body fought its way back of listening to his son whisper stories and half-formed thoughts to her unconscious form, as if his words could pull her back from the edge. At dawn on the 6th day, her eyes opened. Varen was there, of course he was. He was always there. He watched her blink, confusion clouding the storm gray of her eyes. She tried to sit up but gasped in pain and fell back against the pillows. Easy, Varen murmured, stepping forward. You're safe now. You're in the palace. You've been out for 6 days. Her gaze finally focused on him, recognition dawning as she took in his bearing, the authority, the quiet dominance that came with his title. She understood exactly who stood before her, yet there was no fear in her eyes, only exhaustion and disbelief. The cub, she rasped, voice raw. Is he? He's fine, Varen assured her, a faint smile ghosting his lips. Thanks to you, he's right here. He hasn't left your side once. He gestured toward the cot where Kael lay, curled up, still holding her hand. The sight brought tears to her eyes. I thought I was dead, she whispered. I gave him everything. I didn't think there'd be anything left. You nearly did die, Varen said softly. You used the Life Weaver gift. You gave my son your own life to save his. Do you understand how rare that power is? How dangerous? Her eyes widened. Life Weaver. That gift was supposed to be extinct, lost for centuries. I'm just a healer. I didn't mean to. You awakened it, he explained, in an act of pure sacrifice. That's how it manifests. Only those with the purest intent can call it forth. He hesitated, studying her pale face. My name is Varen. I'm the Alpha King of the Northern Territories, and the cub you saved, Kael, is my son, my only heir. You didn't just save a child. You saved my entire world. The weight of that sank in all at once. Ara's eyes closed, a tear slipping free. I didn't know. He was so small. They were going to kill him. I couldn't let that happen. I know, Varen said quietly, and that's what makes you extraordinary. You didn't hesitate. He paused, then continued in a lower voice. There's something else you should know. When I found you, I felt it, the bond. You're my true mate, Arya. Her eyes flew open, shock flashing across her face. That's not possible. I'm nobody. I don't even belong to a pack. The moon goddess wouldn't. The moon goddess did. He interrupted gently. She gave me someone fearless enough to face death for a stranger's child. Someone strong enough to awaken a gift buried for 300 years. He reached for her hand, giving her a chance to pull away. I'm not asking you to accept it now. I just want you to know you're safe here. You have a home here. And Kael's already claimed you as his person, so you're not getting rid of us easily. As if summoned by his words, Kael stirred. His little eyes blinked open, and when he saw her awake, his entire face lit up. She's awake, Dada, he squealed. I told you she would. He scrambled onto the bed, carefully, avoiding her bandages, and threw his small arms around her neck. Thank you for saving me. The bad men were scary, but you made them go away. You're so brave. Please stay. Don't go. Arya looked startled by the child's warmth, but Varen saw something shift in her, a fragile softness taking root. Hey, sweetheart, she said quietly, awkwardly, patting his back. I'm just glad you're okay. You're not hurt, right? Nothing hurts, Kael said proudly, snuggling closer. You fixed me all up. Dada says you gave me your life to make me better. That makes you my hero. And you're pretty too. Like snow. I like snow. Despite the chaos, the fear, and the lingering pain, Arya let out a weak, shaky laugh, genuine. I like snow too, she murmured softly. Over the following weeks, Arya's recovery was slow. Each day, a small battle against exhaustion and lingering injuries. Varen made sure she had everything she could possibly need, the finest food, comfortable clothes, books, to keep her mind engaged in quiet spaces when she needed solitude. But most of all, he gave her space. He didn't push the mate. Bond didn't demand anything. He simply let her heal and adapt to her new life. Kyle, on the other hand, had no concept of boundaries. From the moment Arya could rise from bed, he was at her hip, chattering endlessly about his toys, his lessons, his father, everything his 2-year-old mind could hold. At first, Arya seemed unsure how to handle him, awkward around the constant affection and attention. But slowly Varen watched her walls crumble. He saw her smile when Kale ran to her. He saw her reflexively reach for him when he stumbled. He watched her become the mother Kale had never truly known, not because the mate, Bond, demanded it, but because she genuinely cared for the little boy who had decided she held the world. Her life weaver gift was another matter. Arya approached it with fear, wary of what it might do. Varen brought in scholars, old texts, anyone who might know the secrets of the rare gift. Together they discovered that Life Weaver wasn't merely about transferring vitality. It was about balance, understanding the flow of life energy in all living beings. With guidance and training, Arya learned to heal without endangering herself. She learned to sense illness before it manifested, to strengthen someone's life force without draining her own. She became invaluable to the palace healers, teaching techniques lost for centuries. But the true breakthrough came when she realized she could perceive emotional wounds as well as physical ones. She could soothe trauma, ease anxiety, calm nightmares. That part of her gift helped Kale begin to process his mother's death, teaching him that it was possible to love again without betraying the memory of the woman he had never truly known. 3 months after Arya first woke in the palace, Varen found her in the gardens with Kyle. A warm afternoon sun cast golden light over them as they worked together on flower crowns. Kyle's small hands were clumsy but determined, and Arya patiently guided him in weaving the stems. "For you," Kyle announced, holding up a crooked crown of daisies as Varen approached. "We made you pretty." Varen bent down so his son could place the crown on his head, earning a delighted giggle. "Very pretty," he said solemnly. "Thank you, Kyle." "Did you make one for Arya too?" "She made her own," Kyle replied proudly. "Because she's a big girl and big girls can do things by themselves." "But I helped," Arya said, smiling, her own wildflower crown sitting crookedly on her white hair. She looked so different from the frail woman Varen had found in the forest. Healthy cheeks, flushed with life, eyes bright. "Kyle, why don't you show your crown to healer Leora?" Varen suggested. "I bet she'll love it," Kale said, bouncing to his feet, energy boundless. Varen sat on the bench beside Arya, careful to respect her space. "He loves you," he said quietly. "You know that, right? Not because of what you did for him, not because of some magical bond, but because you're patient, kind, and you make him feel safe." Arya looked down at her flower-crowned fingertips, tracing the petals. "I love him too," she admitted softly. I never thought about having children. I never thought I'd get the chance with no pack, no mate. But Kyle, he's special. Brave, sweet, full of life. Being with him makes me feel like maybe I'm not just a wanderer anymore, like maybe I could be someone's." Varen's voice softened. "Mother. You could be his mother. Arya, if you wanted to be. He needs one, and I think you need him just as much as he needs you." "I'm not his mother," Arya said quietly, the words lacking conviction. "His mother died. I'm just—" "You're the one who's raised him these past 3 months," Varen interrupted. "The one who kisses his bruises, reads him stories, teaches him about flowers. The one he runs to when he has nightmares. The one he sneaks into every night because he feels safer sleeping near you. Biology doesn't make a mother." Varen continued. "Love does." Tears filled Arya's eyes. "I'm scared," she whispered. "What if I'm not good enough? What if I mess him up?" I don't even know how to be a mother, my own mother. She died before I could remember her properly. She died before she could hold him, Varen said gently. But you know what you do. Have a gift. You understand emotions. You heal trauma. You make people feel valued. You saved Kael once. And you save him every single day just by being here, showing him that he's worthy of love and protection. He reached out and threaded his fingers through hers. And you have me. We can figure this out together. We can be his parents together if you let us. Arya looked down at their joined hands, then up at his face. The mate bond, she said hesitantly. I can feel it now. You didn't before when you were too weak. But now, it's there pulling at you, telling you my mind. I've felt it since the moment I saw you, Varen admitted. Lying in the dirt, covered in blood, barely breathing. And all I could think was mine, my mate, the woman I've been waiting for my whole life. But I want to be clear about something, Arya. I don't want you to feel pressured by the bond. I don't want you to accept me, because fate says so. If we do this, I want it to be because you choose me, he said. Not because the moon goddess decreed it, but because you wake up every day and decide you want to be with me. That's a lot of pressure, Arya said, a small smile tugging at her lips. What if I decide I don't want to be with you? Then I'll respect your choice, Varen said seriously. You'll still have a place here. You'll still be Kael's guardian if you want to be. The mate bond doesn't give me ownership. It's a gift, not a chain. And gifts can be declined. Arya studied his face, her gray eyes searching. You mean that I do? I'd let you go, he confirmed. But I'd really prefer if you stayed, he added. And I'd really prefer if eventually you considered accepting the bond. Because I think we could be amazing together. I think you could be not just Kael's mother, but my partner, my equal, my Luna. I've never been anyone's equal, Arya said quietly. I've always been the weird one, the ghost girl, the outsider. People tolerate me because I'm useful, not because they value me. I value you, Varen said firmly. Not because you're useful, though you are. Not because you saved my son, though. I'll be grateful for that. Every day. But because you're smart, strong, kind, even after the world gave you every reason not to be. Because you make my son laugh. Because you teach my healers techniques they never dreamed of. Because when I look at you, I see my future. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. Take your time. There's no rush. We have all the time in the world, but know I'm here. Waiting. Hoping. Ready to build something amazing with you whenever you're ready. Arya didn't answer with words. Instead, she leaned forward, resting her head on his shoulder. A gesture of trust more powerful than any declaration. They sat like that for a long while, flower crowns on their heads, fingers entwined, while Kael's laughter drifted through the garden. A month later, Arya came to Varen's study, nervous but determined. I've decided, she said without preamble, about the bond about them. And Varen asked, heart pounding, but expression calm. I want to try, Arya said. Not because fate says we should, but because you gave me space to heal, time to think, and allowed me to fall in love with your son, without expecting anything in return. Because when I imagine my future now, both of you are in it. Relief and joy flooded Varen so intensely he could barely breathe. You're sure you can still change your mind? I meant what I said about... Arya stepped forward and kissed him, soft, tentative, their first kiss. The mate bond flared brightly between them, making them gasp. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Arya smiled. I'm sure. I want this. I want you. I want to be Kael's mother, your mate, and the Luna of this pack. I want you to stop running and start living. You want a family. Then you have one, Varen said, pulling her close. You have us for as long as you'll have us. The mating ceremony was held under a full moon a week later. Kyle served as the ring bearer, nearly dropping the bands 3 times, his tiny hands trembling with excitement. The entire pack attended along with representatives from neighboring territories. But the most extraordinary guests were the white wolves that emerged from the forest, wild ones never before seen near the palace. They formed a circle around the ceremony, a protective honor guard for the life weaver who had united shifters and her kind. When Varen marked Arya, claiming her as his mate, and Luna, before the entire assembly, the bond between them settled perfectly, not a chain, but a mutual choice. Their partnership was built on respect, trust, and love. Kale cheered louder than anyone, then demanded to know if this meant Arya was officially his mother. Yes, Arya said, kneeling to hug him. If you want me to be, I want to be. Kale threw his arms around her neck. Best mother ever, even better than flower crowns, he declared. Years later, when Kyle was older and beginning his own training as heir, he would ask his mother about the day she saved him, about what made her risk everything for a stranger's cub. Arya would smile and pull him close. You weren't a stranger, she would tell him. The moment I saw you hurt and scared, you became mine to protect. That's what family does. We protect each other, and you gave me the greatest gift in return. You gave me a reason to stop running and start living. You gave me a home. Kyle, who would grow up to be a strong and compassionate leader, would remember her words and build his rule on the principles she taught him. That true strength is measured by sacrifice, that the greatest leaders give everything to protect the weakest. And that family isn't always blood, it's always a choice. The life weaver gift would pass down through the royal line, awakening in Kyle's own children generations later. And the story of the ghost girl who saved a prince and became a queen would be told and retold, a legend of sacrifice and love, reminding all wolves that the moon goddess rewards those with pure hearts.